News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet, 4 million unique users, syndicated by CRN Digital Talk Radio to an additional 12 million households, available on demand all over the place. And I remind you to go to reportergary.com, check it early and often, like voting in Chicago, for stories that you may or may not see, hear, or read in the mainstream media. Well, the GOP has promised to make cuts. The president tomorrow will be talking about spending. The first area that the GOP took aim at, if I can use the term took aim these days, I'm not sure if I'm even allowed to do that. Somebody check and see and let me know. Was at the Health Reform Act, which is commonly shortcutted as Obamacare. And as we have discussed, perhaps ad nauseum on this program, the so-called vote to repeal was not a vote to repeal because the members of the House, controlled by the Republicans, know that it's not going to get an airing, not going to get a vote, and even if it were to get a vote in the Senate, it likely would not pass because the Senate is controlled by the Democrats. And clearly, even if it were to pass the Senate, it would be vetoed by the President of the United States. So now there is a two-pronged attack on the health reform bill. One is by a number of attorneys generals across this nation who are filing suit, and there actually has been a successful legal challenge, one thus far, which was to the portion that requires everybody to have some kind of health insurance, although probably that hasn't been completely appealed and litigated. The other way is legislatively, and they're going line by line, attempting to limit the impact of this bill, which they believe, the opponents, will cost the nation more than it will help the nation, notwithstanding the fact that the Congressional Budget Office, which is nonpartisan, has analyzed it and has said that it actually will create money and jobs in the United States, not take away jobs, as the Republicans are saying. And the very first item that they're going against, trying to get out of there, and this is to satisfy the Tea Party Republicans who are strongly influencing the legislative agenda in the House of Representatives, is abortion. Now, as I understand it, what they are talking about is making it so that the federal plan would not cover abortions, even in cases where the woman was raped, a victim of incest, or medically necessary to save the life of the mother. Well, here to talk about this assault, not through the courts, but legislatively, little by little on Roe v. Wade, is Carole King. Carole is a longtime feminist activist. She was on the national boards of the National Organization for Women, the National Abortion Rights Action League. She served as executive director for the Michigan Abortion Rights Action League. In fact, I know her from our mutual days in Michigan. Carole was inducted into the Michigan Women's Hall of Fame in 2008. She writes a blog now for Ms. Magazine and is co-owner of a documentary production company in Los Angeles. So my, I won't say old, but longtime friend who I haven't seen or heard from in ages, Carole King, welcome to News Talk Online on the Paltalk News Network.
Hello, Gary.
Hello, Carole. You sound exactly as you did X number of years ago. I'm not going to say how many. And, you know, I have to admit, I looked you up on Facebook, and you look exactly as you did way back when. That's amazing.
Well, you look the same, too. I saw you on Facebook. So neither one of us has aged through the years, huh?
Well, maybe I've aged a little. Carol, did I frame the proposition properly? What the Republicans really want to do is to defund from the health care bill the ability of women to obtain abortions under any circumstance, including incest, rape, or when medically necessary to save the life of the woman?
Well, that's what they're trying to do. I mean, they have been after this forever, and now that they have the health care bill, they're going to try it this way. And it's really bad news for women all across America. If we don't buy separate policies in the exchanges that cover abortion, we're going to have to pay for it out of our pockets. So it's just another step along the road of the anti-choice movements trying to restrict women's rights.
You know, I mentioned, as you probably heard in my introduction, about the attempts by the Republican Party right now legislatively with regard to Obamacare in total. And I suggested it was, you know, playing to a constituency. They know they're not going to get anywhere with it. Now, I am not an attorney, as you know, but it would seem to me that that to do this would violate the equal protections under the law provisions of the Constitution and probably would not hold muster. I mean, why wouldn't there be a legal argument that would say to only allow for a woman who has financial means to get an abortion and to preclude one who does not? Wouldn't an argument be successfully made that that violates equal protection provisions?
Well, you're absolutely right, Gary, and the fact is that that's probably how it would be argued if it came to fruition. But the fact of the matter is they know this isn't going to go anywhere, but there are assaults all over the country in state legislatures trying to get to the Supreme Court to further curtail women's rights to their reproductive rights, you know, to prevent access. So while it's going on in Washington, it's also happening in states all across the country. So the assault continues, and whether or not it happens in Congress and whether or not they succeed in the health care bill, which I should say, the health care reform bill already is very, very restrictive of women taking advantage of their insurance to cover an abortion. So, what they want to do is really close down every clinic in the country. They want to make abortion totally inaccessible to all women. So they're coming at us in every single direction they can think of.
Carol King, basically, this is a political maneuver, but not really a truly legislative maneuver, in your opinion, anyway.
Absolutely. They're not going to succeed. And, with Gary, the thing is, and you mentioned this and you've talked about it in the past, with so much that's going on in this country in terms of the economy, with what's happening with joblessness, with all of the things that are happening with our infrastructure crumbling, why they're taking this on, you can only imagine that it has to be political. They think they're going to win points. They have a constituency that is totally committed to preventing women from having access not just to abortion, but also birth control and family planning. So this is only a political maneuver, but they're doing it everywhere across the country because they think they owe this to their constituents.
Carol King is our caller, our guest, and she is a longtime feminist activist, a pro-choice individual, and she writes a blog for Ms. Magazine where she talks about women's rights issues. Now, Carol, I wanted to loop you in and get your thoughts on the horrific case that just occurred in Philadelphia, where late-term abortions were being conducted by a doctor who was not actually licensed to conduct abortions,
right.
and it was disgusting what he was doing to these nearly full-term children, and I'm wondering your thoughts about that and how that helps frame the debate, because clearly there are those who have tried to toss that into this argument as well.
Well, this is clearly the case of a doctor who was performing late-term abortions that were illegal. He was killing the children who were born live, and this is the problem that we're talking about. He has catered to a group of women who are poor, who are women who often don't speak English, who don't understand what's happening to them, and he's a predator. And this is what happened before Roe versus Wade. You know, doctors, and sometimes people who weren't even doctors, would decide that they wanted to go into the abortion business to make some money, and they didn't know what they were doing. So women were really their victims. So what we have seen with this case in Philadelphia is really, I think, a harbinger of things to come if we continue down this road of making abortion accessible to fewer and fewer women. Desperate women will take desperate measures. And that has always been the case. Even when abortions are illegal, women find a way to an abortionist. And this guy clearly, you know, he was a doctor, but he was a family practitioner. He had no training in obstetrics and gynecology. He had no medical personnel on his staff. He was in this simply to make money. And it became a criminal enterprise. He was also selling prescription drugs. This is what we're going to see. If we make Roe versus Wade go away, if we overturn Roe and we turn it over to the states to regulate again. You know, in this particular instance, this was gross negligence. This was someone who should have been stopped long ago. The laws were there to be enforced, and they just weren't enforced. This was clear regulatory failure. So, you know, I think we have to put it in perspective. This is not somebody who was a real professional abortion provider.
The guest is Carol King. The first caller is